Hey everybody, welcome to another M365.video SharePoint short. I'm David Warner. Today we're going to continue talking about SharePoint Library Components, specifically on how we can optimize the bundling of the functionality that lives in our library components. There's some awareness that we need to have, so we're going to take a look at some precautions that are needed when we start including functionality in our library components, and we're going to see how we can optimize that functionality for the best SharePoint page performance when our library is being used by a web part or an extension on a SharePoint page. If you watch the introductory video, then you understand the core concept of what a SharePoint library component provides. Essentially, it's the ability to independently include in our SharePoint tenant custom functionality that's available to our web parts and extensions, but not included in the web part or extension bundle. So in this example, on the left, we may be including jQuery. On the right, we may be including moment.js. The icon in the middle represents custom functionality of our own, maybe that's specific to our organization that we want to include and make available to all web parts and extensions. So obviously this is a very cool and powerful opportunity to include functionality that we don't have to store in multiple places or even externally to our SharePoint site. So we may start getting excited and adding in functionality, and before you know it, we've overloaded the library with all kinds of functionality that bloats it, that isn't always going to be used every single time. Let me try to illustrate this in another way. If you're a Wreck-It Ralph fan, you're gonna love it. At the end of the newest Wreck-It Ralph, Ralph Breaks the Internet movie, there's a funny scene where Ralph has to feed a bunny pancakes over and over. It's part of a game. Well, imagine, if you will, those pancakes represent features in our library. So we keep feeding our library more and more and more features without optimizing the bundling of it. Can you imagine what it might look like eventually? You guessed it, our library is now overfilled with lots of functionality, which is great. But when we load our library on a page, we may only want to use one small piece of that library for a particular web part or extension. The problem is the entire library is going to get loaded onto a page when we're not using optimized bundling. So if we do fill our library with functionality, which we should, but we don't optimize the bundling, this could be the resulting reaction by our users when they try to load our page. So let's look at a couple of demos. The first demo is going to be what our library bundle looks like if we don't optimize. We're going to import jQuery, moment.js, and some custom.js. And this is going to result in a single JavaScript bundle file, which is going to be rather large. So let's see what that looks like. Let me set the stage for this non-optimized demo. On the left is a library component that I scaffolded out. Now I've already imported Moment and jQuery, and like we need with any library, we've created functions that will return each of those. I've also included just a couple of simple custom functions for an alert and a console logging. On the right is a DOS prompt command that will go ahead and is just listed to that solution, so we can do some gulp bundling. And on the bottom is just an Explorer view of our distribution folder for this library component. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and issue a gulp bundle command into our DOS prompt. Now what that's going to do is it's going to perform all of the imports of those libraries as well as package them up into a single JavaScript bundle. Let's go ahead and perform that gulp, and you'll see it go through the tasks needed. It's going to analyze, it's going to perform a web pack, and then in the distribution folder here on the bottom, we'll see those files eventually show up. And what we're going to find is a single JavaScript bundle file at the end of the web pack. We can see that now, and we can see the size of our JavaScript is 853K. Now this is not fully compressed. We'll issue another gulp build with a -- ship to see what the final result will look like. So we'll go ahead and switch to our command prompt, and we'll issue that with -- ship. Now that will go through a full compression. We'll treat it as if we're going to deploy this to a production environment, and it's going to convert our files into a little bit smaller at the end of the web pack. All right, now we can see that's happened, and we see it has shrunk quite a bit, 355 kilobytes. But still, if all we're wanting to utilize is one of our custom library alert or library console methods, we're still going to have to load the entire non-optimized library.js file, which includes all of jQuery and Moment. Not exactly the most optimal performance. Now let's take a look at an optimized bundling demo. We're going to import the same libraries we did in our non-optimized demo, jQuery, moment.js, and some of the custom JavaScript that we included. However, in this optimized bundling demo, we're going to construct our library so that each of those 3 pieces of functionality are bundled into separate files. This results in smaller bundles which can independently be imported to be used within our web part or extensions. Just like in our first demo, we've gone ahead and opened Visual Studio Code to our optimized library solution here on the left. We've got our DOS command prompt open to that exact solution and all of its files. And over here in the Explorer window, we've got the distribution folder open for that particular solution so we can see what our bundles look like. Now let's take a quick look at how we've changed our solution. The first thing we've done is we've separated out all of our libraries and our custom functionality into separate .ts files, separate TypeScript files. It's not absolutely necessary that we separate our functionality into multiple TS files. I like the separation from an organization perspective. If we go ahead and open up the jQuery, we see we're just simply importing it, and then we're doing an export to return that particular jQuery object, just like we were in the first non-optimized demo. The difference is that when we import it here, we're using an async await import. So this is going to allow our jQuery library to be bundled in its own individual file. And we're importing our other functionality in the exact same way. So import as well as our custom functions for the alert in console are both being imported using the async await. So let's go into our command prompt and we'll go ahead and execute a gulp bundle. And we'll see how now our bundling is going to be more optimized and done in separate files. All right, now that it's complete, we can see that it's separated out a lot more JavaScript bundles. We see with these number.number, it's actually separated out each of those libraries, each of those TypeScript files into multiple files. Now, just like we did in the first demo, let's go ahead and perform a gulp bundle with --ship to represent what the file sizes would look in a production environment. All right, now that the bundling is complete, we can see that each of our separate bundles is significantly smaller than it was before the --ship, but still the beauty is that they've each been separated out into separate files. I can tell just by the file size this is our custom functionality. It's 2 small, very tiny methods that do an alert and a console log. So now, if I wanted to utilize those functions alone, this particular file is all that would be loaded at runtime when my web part or extension call upon this library to use its functionality. That is super awesome. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Here's some useful links to help you get started with SharePoint Library Components and optimized bundling. The first 2 is documentation from Microsoft, providing you an overview and tutorial on SharePoint Library Components. The third is a library component patterns and practices repo where you can find the demo from this video available for yourself to use free of charge. The last 2 links are from a couple of fantastic guys in the community, Sergey and Vardamon, both active in working with library components and have fantastic blogs. Definitely good stuff. Check them out. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to subscribe in YouTube to get alerts for all my future videos.